Engines scream above a small coastal airfield. 5 F-18s carve a diamond. Then one breaks formation. Down on the paint stands an old man with sun-faded wands. And in the next 60 seconds you will feel a runway become a living heartbeat. A crowd turn into a crew, and a quiet promise become a rescue if you are new here. Welcome, and tell me this in the comments. Where in the world are you watching from? Your city and country. Drop it below so this field can feel a little bigger and a little braver today is not about a stunt. It is about a choice. An 82-year-old deck chief named Thomas Hawley steps into the wind. A young crew scrambles at his side. A chaplain teaches a crowd to breathe. A pilot fights the softest battle, the one inside his chest. And you and I are going to stand with them, breath by breath, until wheels touch home. Stay with me to the last frame. Because there is a moment when the engines fade, the fog lifts, and everyone turns to face the old man on the tarmac. And in that simple turn you will feel what courage sounds like when an entire town sings it together. Settle in, breathe slow, we begin now. The first scream of engines split the afternoon. The sky of our little coastal town shimmered with heat like a living thing, and 5 F-18s carved a perfect diamond above the tarmac. Then the 6th broke formation, just a breath off at first. Then wider, nose slipping, the crowd exhaled all at once, and every head turned toward the old man near the painted center line, the one with the faded deck jersey and the hands that looked like they still remembered fire. His name was Thomas Hawley. 82, retired chief petty officer, flight deck boss back when ships were steel and tempers were hotter. He carried himself the way men who kept pilots alive carry themselves. Slow, deliberate, no wasted motion. A marshaller without wands, a shepherd without a staff. He had come today with a cheap folding chair and a promise to his late son, Mark. A Hornet pilot who never came home. I will stand where you would have stood, kid. I will clap for every safe landing like it is yours. That was the quiet vow that made him lace his boots this morning. Family day at Harbor Field had the feel of a picnic and a prayer. Strollers clicking over rivet heads in the concrete, lemonade sweating in paper cups, veterans in caps stitched with gold thread, a line of children clutching ear protection like lucky coins. At show center, Lieutenant Riley Chun should have been the tip of the arrow. Instead, his jet angled off like a bird with a wounded wing, a whisper of vapor curling from the right main gear. Well, hardly more than breath, but Thomas saw it and went still, the way you do when the old part of your brain counts seconds between lightning and thunder in the tower. Ava Martinez, mid-30s, steady voice, former glider pilot, snapped for eyes on Echo 3, headset pressed tight, wave off if unstable, foam trucks to hot standby, she said, her words clean as glass. On the ramp, Crew Chief Maya Brooks looked up with a wrench in her hand and a knot in her throat. She had spent 2 years with the Birds of Freedom demo team and had never seen Riley color outside the lines. Not once. Jamal Reed, 19, first summer on ground crew, sprinted without thinking, hauling a crate that rattled with marshalling wands, chalks, tie-down chains that hummed like B security officer Caleb Ortiz, broad shoulders and the patience of a man who has de-escalated 100 arguments. Move to clear the spectator rope. Easy, folks. Give the crew some room. This is routine. The word routine tried to be brave and failed. Phones rose. Someone started a live stream. A local reporter named Lena Kovac locked her lens on the strange painting the sky was making and breathed into her mic. The 6th Hornet is offset. Say a prayer, Harbor Field. Hold your breath. Somewhere behind the food trucks, a portable speaker kept playing a song from somebody's youth. The notes felt obscene, too cheerful. They fizzled away as a volunteer yanked the plug. Thomas did not run. He stepped one measured stride, then another, right to the paint where the nose wheels would want to kiss if the pilot chose the runway over the taxiway. His cane hung against his forearm, his left hand lifted, palm out, not to stop the jet. Nothing human could, but to speak. His body a message in a language he had lived for decades. He saw the set of the horizontal stabs, a jitter in the right flaperon, the slight asymmetry that says hydraulic B is complaining. He mouthed words. He had said through storm and salt, "Pilot, I see you. I am with you. Fly the ball. Keep your heart slow. Keep your hands light," Ava called. Echo 3. You are high and right. Winds 8 cross from your starboard. Say intentions. Riley's reply cracked and fuzzed. Negative gear indication right main. Possible partial. Fuel at bingo +5. Smoke in cockpit minimal. The words were calm, but the syllables trembled. Maya's eyes darted to the crash crew. Get the phone lines dragged and charge them. She barked. Jamal wands now. The kid fumbled the case, and Thomas was already kneeling, fingers knowing the latches by memory. He pulled 2 battered wands the color of sunrise and tested their weight like a priest lifting candles. Jamal blinked. "Sir, you cannot." And Thomas said, "Son, once upon a time, this was what I did before breakfast." The crowd drew in like a single lung. A woman with a baby whispered a prayer into the tiny crown of hair. An old Marine squeezed the brim of his cap until his knuckles went pale. Mayor Nora Vance, who had lost a cousin over the Hindu Kush, stood without blinking, Lena's live stream. Numbers ticked higher and higher, the chat flooding with hearts and flags, and that strange digital courage people give one another when they cannot touch. Up there, Riley rolled wings level, trying to coax the jet into an obedient line, but the right main refused to lock. The green light would not come, and the gear bay coughed another ribbon of vapor. Thin as a Lidomus lifted the wands, and his shoulders settled. No shakiness now, only ritual. He was not stealing authority. He was lending Riley a steadier heartbeat. Every signal he threw was a letter from a dead language, but on some deep channel, the pilot could read it, arms up, slow it down, ease the ah. Nose, check the right, hold, hold. Ava was still in his ear. The checklist was still in his lap, but the old man on the paint was telling a second story. About fathers and sons and ships that burn, and men who come home, because somebody on the deck chose not to panic. Caleb stepped to Thomas's flank, not to remove him, but to stand with him. Maya and Jamal took the other side, a small crooked line. Of humans against the idea of falling, Lena's camera hesitated, then reframed, letting the world see not just the jet, but the people who had decided fear could wait its turn. Thomas felt the sun on his neck, and the grit of paint under his boot, and the ache in his knee. His mind fell into a memory. Ranger's deck at midnight. Rain like nails. A pilot named Ferris bringing it in blind. The way Ferris had trusted Thomas's wands like they were scripture, and lived because of it on the fringe of the crowd, Sister May Donnelly. The chaplain who looked like an ant and spoke like a lighthouse, threaded through with a radio she barely knew how to use. She touched shoulders, she said names, reminding people who they were, reminding them you are part of this field, you are part of this landing. Breathe for him, pray for him, hold the line in your heart. It was not magic, it was biology and love. Hearts sinking, cortisol sliding down a notch. 1,000 small bodies making one big calm. Riley lined up long, Ava's. Voice a metronome. Maya's hands ready. Jamal's knees shaking, but his chin up. Caleb's eyes scanning every edge for the flash of something wrong. Lena whispered, Echo 3. Do you see him? The old man with the wands? And Riley, somewhere in the noise, somewhere past the checklist and the fear and the smell of hot electrical, saw a figure in a sun-bleached jersey marked with a squadron patch from another century. Saw arms that moved with the certainty of tides, and his breath loosened a fraction, enough to choose the precise place where courage becomes skill. Thomas lowered his right wand a hair, raised the left, micro adjustments, a slow ballet, only 2. Men could feel. He angled his body to hide the churning delight and terror inside him. He did not want to be a hero. He wanted to be useful. He wanted one more safe set of wheels on Earth. The right main flirted with compliance. Half lock, then. Unlock. The jet wavered, Ava said. Go around if unstable. And for a heartbeat, the crowd leaned toward surrender. Better to wave off. Better to try again. But Thomas shook his head once. Almost invisible. A private no. Not this time. The wind is turning. The leak has a clock. He swept both wands forward. A gesture that meant come home. And the old habit in Riley's hands answered, throttle feathered, nose kissed the line. Every child on the fence held their breath the way seeds hold rain. The right main hung on the cusp, the universe balancing on a hinge the size of a fist. Thomas stepped one pace closer to the rushing ghost of heat and metal and sound. The world narrowed to a bright white center, and time gave him a gift, a sliver of silence in which a father could say to a son who is gone and to a stranger who is here, we are with you, all of us. Come home. The jet came again along the shoreline, low and wide. The sound felt inside the ribs instead of the ears. Riley kept his voice steady as he called the pass, tear down, negative lock on right main, smoke trace intermittent, fuel safe for another. 20. Request visual check. Above him the formation had split clean. Captain Andre Valdez slid into a shepherd position off Riley's wing. Eyes like a carpenter's square, calm and exact. I have you, Riley, he said. I am looking. Hold this line. In the tower, Ava cued binoculars for every set of hands. 3 pairs. Confirmed the same truth. The right wheel hung like a question. The door misaligned by a thumb's width. A hinge sulking. A spring that had seen too many summers Maya's jaw worked as she ran scenarios. If it drags, we need a river of foam from. Threshold to midfield. She snapped to the crash chief. Lay the blanket on the right side of the center line. Keep the left side dry for friction. Charge bottles, no hero moves, slow as your friend. Jamal moved the cones with a speed that belonged to someone older sweat, carving clean maps on his dusty forehead. Caleb widened the sterile zone and spoke to people with his hands open, reassuring, insisting, you are part of this. Give them room to save him. The fence bowed as the crowd leaned without meaning to. A human tide pressing for sight, Thomas asked for a radio, his voice too gentle to be a demand and too sure to be ignored. Ava hesitated for a breath. Rules are the ropes that keep you from falling, but there are days you use a rope as a ladder. She patched him to tower intercom. Ground to tower to air, Echo 3. Harbor has a ground marshal with 50 years on deck. His name is Thomas Holly. Pilot's discretion to listen. Riley took a breath that tasted like carbon and childhood. Understood the gift inside those words. I will take any light you can give, Chief, he said. And Thomas felt the old rank settle on his shoulders like a coat that still fit Chief to pilot. Thomas said, his voice sanded by salt and history, you will burn a little more fuel in wide circles over the bay. Do not dump over people. We are laying foam. When you come home, you will touch your left wheel first. You will kiss it, then you will let your nose think about the paint. The right wheel will try to write its own story. We will give it a softer page. You will keep your hands like water. You will not fight the tremor. You will keep your chin in the future and not the past. Do you copy? Riley answered with a small laugh he did not plan. The kind that leaks when a stranger calls you son without the word. Copy all, Chief, staying wide over water to burn clean. Coming back in 2 turns, Valdez called the inspection on the second pass. Right door proud of the hinge. Trace vapor now stronger. Could be hydraulic B and a little tire smoke. Your flaperon shivers on the right. Adjust trim. Riley answered, adjusting, and brought the jet around like a man coaxing a frightened horse toward a gate. Down on the field, Maya organized a chalk talk drawn with the edge of a wrench in the concrete. Her team leaned in and learned the tricky dance of 2 trucks on a stagger. one laying silver foam like a river, one shadowing with dry chemical. She pointed to the windsock with a pencil like a wand. 8 knots cross at 2 o'clock. Expect the nose to want to go left. The right will grab. Breathe through it. Lena held the camera steady and for once said nothing. The chat scrolled like rain, 1,000 small prayers, a few foolish jokes that died unanswered. An old man named Earl handed his cane to a teenager named Eli so he could raise his hands and be part of the invisible net people build with hope. Sister May moved through that sea of faces, teaching them how to breathe. Inhale hope, exhale fear, again, again. Let him feel your calm. The portable speaker was still dead. The only music was engines and the click of fire bottles and a baby's soft complaining that sounded exactly like life refusing to bow. Thomas rolled his shoulders and looked at Maya, his eyes asking the question a leader asks another leader. Are we ready? She nodded, and the nod contained 1,000 hours of training and busted knuckles and jokes told at midnight to keep the bad stuff small. Jamal stood a step behind her with a coil of nylon ready to be anything, a strap for a door, a leash for a fire, a symbol for courage. Caleb checked the gaps and found none. Even the hot dog stand had gone silent. Even the gulls had decided to be respectful. The runway shimmered like a mirage wrapped in a bandage of foam. Ava called final. The way conductors shape a room with a wand. Echo 3, you are cleared to land on 1-8. Wind steady 8 cross from starboard. Foam path painted. Crash cruise set. You are not alone. And those last 4 words mattered. They threaded into Riley's spine and let him sit taller inside a cockpit that felt 2 sizes too small. His fingers were still, his jaw unclenched. He pictured not boats or bonds or broken hearts. He pictured a boy on a bicycle trying not to wobble while a father jogged behind with a hand ready but not clutching. I have you, he whispered back, not into the mic, into the air. The pass looked almost quiet from far away. A bird dropping from a wire. Then closer it was a storm wearing a uniform. Valdez stayed high and offset, camera running, eyes carving details. Thomas lifted his wands. The old choreography lit his bones. Left, left, ease. Hold the nose a breath. Above the paint. Yes, that is it. Let gravity find you. Riley bled speed and let the left main kiss with a sound everyone will remember in their teeth for the rest of their lives. The nose touched a heartbeat later, a little snake in it, a little prayer, and the right hung there like a promise, and a threat, and the jet rolled on a line of silver that turned the afternoon into a mirror. The gear door coughed. The tire smoked. Sparks wrote a brief, ugly script and went out in foam. The right main argued with the physics of the world and lost. A little, grabbed, stuttered, half-locked. Screamed in metal that only some of us could hear. Pilots hear it. Deck crews do. Anyone who has ever kept something alive with their hands recognizes that voice. Thomas dipped the left wand fast and then lifted both, the signal for commit, no. Second guessing now. This is the part where courage stops being a word. Riley settled a touch more weight over the left. The jet yawed. The crosswind remembered its job and tried to push. The foam hissed under the right like rain on a stove-top. Maya shouted tiny corrections to her drivers without needing to raise her voice. Bring the blanket thicker by 5 feet. Shadow the nose with dry. Jamal moved like a stitch in a wound, closing what gaped. Caleb saw a man step past the rope without meaning to, and was already there with a hand on his shoulder. Easy, my friend, back with us. You can help him by staying here. The man nodded and cried without shame. Lena's camera trembled for a single second and then steadied. She remembered her father showing her how to hold a level when she was 7. Keep your hands soft and your eye hard. She whispered the old lesson into her lens. Ava watched numbers that told the story under the story. Speed, angle, drift. She held her breath the way you do when you are about to blow out candles for someone else. Valdez called the picture. You are good. You are good, hold. The right main squealed like a violin learning forgiveness. The shh. Lock light flickered a stubborn yellow, and then a soft green. Not a clean, proud green. A tired one. A maybe. A you can come home if you promise to be gentle. Riley felt it in his bones before he saw it on the panel. A little easing, a little. Right. A little thank you to the universe that takes mercy as seriously as gravity. Thomas lowered the wands and let his arms fall, and his right hand began to shake now that he could. He kept the shake small by pressing his palm to his thigh. He looked up at the cockpit he could not see into and said with his mouth closed, Mark, see him? See this stranger who is not a stranger. Look how he listened. The nose started to shimmy as if remembering every bad story from every runway. Maya waved her driver in tighter, dry chemicals sketching a white halo near the nose. Wheel. The crowd made one single noise that was not a word. It was the sound humans make when they are all the same person for a heartbeat. The jet still had to slow, still had to give up the heat of its fear, still had to keep the right side from biting. Riley eased the throttles to idle and feathered his brakes with the tenderness of someone learning how to hold a newborn. The foam kept its promise. The crosswind failed to be cruel. The right main flirted with betrayal and then chose loyalty. The old man on the paint lowered his wands and bowed his head, not to the jet, to the 1,000 small decisions and the 1,000 quiet prayers that had braided into a net under this one living moment. The Hornet rolled with a wobble that felt almost like gratitude. The Hornet rolled to a stubborn crawl, the left main sure under load, the right main a worry that refused to let go. Riley kept the nose light and breathed with the jet, counting heartbeats instead of feet when the tail finally dipped into that last shiver of momentum. The cockpit filled with a sour breath of smoke, faint at first then stronger, a warning that the story was not finished. Hydraulic mist had kissed a hot brake, and the heat wanted a voice. A thin flame licked inside the bay and then hid in the foam. Not gone, only waiting. Ava read the temperatures and felt the prickle down her neck. Echo 3, you have smoke near. The right wheel well. Hold position. Do not taxi. Crash crew is on you. Valdez stayed high and offset. Camera rolling, voice low and steady. You are good, Riley. Stay with me. Checklist breathe. Maya signaled her trucks into the triangle only. She could see safe approach at 45 to the nose. Never head on. The team flowed with her hands. Try agent first in a halo. No blast that would push fire into places it did not belong. Foam to cool, eyes in pairs to see what nerves could miss. Thomas lifted one wand and pointed with the other. Not to command, to compose. His hand carved air like a slow hymn. He knew the danger that wore no flames. He knew the ejection seat armed hot in a cockpit that might trap a pilot too long. He knew how legs cramp when you have been brave for too many minutes in a row. He called to Ava without raising his voice. We need the cockpit safe sequence, seat pins, canopy plan. Talk him home in order. She nodded, and the words came clean. Echo 3, make your jet safe. Safe the seat, confirm pins, stand by for canopy. Riley answered through grit, hand on yellow and black, seat safe, pins in, safed, canopy handle ready, smoke light in the lungs. Standing by, Caleb placed his big hands on smaller shoulders and moved 3 people back one pace without making them feel pushed. He had herded fear before, in grocery aisles and midnight parking lots. He understood that courage needed room. Jamal ran a coil of nylon to Maya without tripping over it. The kid was new, but his timing had the strange grace you only see when someone chooses who they want to be in public. He stopped at Thomas's side and offered the strap without words. Thomas looped it over his shoulder like he had 100 times on carriers, a habit as old as Sea Spray. Lena kept filming and kept breathing. Professional and human at once, she framed the scene so the world could see the choreography and not just the fear. Her chat had become a quiet river of names and hometowns and prayers. Lawson from Tulsa, Marisol from El Paso, Priya from Fresno. An old sergeant typed, "I am holding the line from my porch," and it felt like a blanket draped over the field. Sister. May stood near the rope and led people in a whisper chorus. In through the nose for 4, out through the mouth for 6. Again, again, give him your calm. The crowd became a heart with 1,000 valves finally opening. The first puff of dry chemical sketched white around the right main, and the smoke thinned, then thickened, then thinned again. A creature arguing with itself. Maya sent a tap code. Down the side of her truck, 2 short, 1 long. Driver eased. Nozzle angled down and away. Protect the brake from blast. Cool the metal without chasing the leak deeper. She could not see the leak, but she could smell it. Hot, sweet, and wrong. She remembered her father teaching her to rebuild a carburetor. On a hot afternoon, and the way he said, "Trust your nose. It knows before your eyes do." She smiled at the memory, and the smile steadied her hands. Riley cracked the canopy, and the world came in. Loud and hot and kind, he pulled it the rest of the way with care, mindful of the wind. Mindful of the way small choices become big ones under stress. Thomas stepped forward a measured pace and lifted his left hand. Palm up, wait, breathe, look. At me, he did not need words. The gesture spoke a language that older men teach younger men in boat bays and hangars. Riley met his eyes from a cockpit that seemed suddenly 10 feet high. He saw a face lined by sun and grief and work, and something in him unclenched, seat safe confirmed. Canopy open, pilot breathing. Ava relayed, her voice a bridge. "We need a chalk on the left and a soft kiss on the nose. No sudden moves." Maya sent. Jamal with the chalk and a grin that had real comfort in it. The kid placed it gentle as a lullaby, and Thomas could not help himself. He squeezed the boy's shoulder once. Not praise, recognition. You belong here. Caleb caught movement at the rope and was already there. A small boy had slipped under and was running toward the trucks with a bouquet of wildflowers clenched, like a mission. Caleb knelt and met him halfway. "Hey, Captain, those are beautiful. Let's deliver them together later when the crew is ready." The boy nodded, eyes shining, hugged the flowers, and let himself be escorted back to his mother. Crisis. Avoided, dignity intact. Valdez called down a detail Riley would not have caught alone. "You have a sag on the right inboard flap. Slight. Do not cycle it. Leave it alone. Let the crew work." Riley's hands wanted to move, wanted to fix. He kept them still, and instead unclipped his oxygen and took in the field for real, the faces. The trucks, the old man's steady wands, the strip of silver that had been his road home. He felt foolish for a heartbeat, not for fear, for forgetting that every safe landing is a choir, not a solo. The fire showed itself at last with a brave little tongue of orange. A child daring attention. Maya snuffed it with a short pulse and then cooled the metal again. Her driver feathered the flow exactly as she wanted. Thomas watched for the colors he had learned by heart. The ugly black of electrical, the pearly white of steam, the invisible danger of invisible gas. What he saw made his jaw loosen. This was heat and stubbornness, not the hungry kind, fixable by patience and hands. He turned to Jamal. "We will need that strap to nurse the right leg if it refuses to carry its weight when we tow. We lay soft, we do not yank. Think of lifting." A sleeping child, and not waking them, Ava worked the radios like a pianist, clearing a taxiway to stage a tow, holding the formation in a lazy wheel overhead so they could be present without being a hazard, thanking the med unit for standing by and reminding them that standing by is an act of skill and mercy. She had flown gliders in college because she loved the truth of air when it is quiet. Today she conducted noise into order and felt the same. Clean Joy Lena lowered the camera for one breath and let her eyes be a person's. She found Thomas and wondered about the patches on his jersey A ship name faded like a scar, a squadron logo from another era. She made a note to ask him later. Not for clicks, for history. She raised the camera again, because this too was history. A living room in Ohio would watch this and remember that strangers can become a crew without Paper Sister May's whisper rose into something like a song without melody. A river of thank you, and keep them, and let us be worthy of this kindness. The crowd answered without words, shoulders softened, hands let go of their own fear. A volunteer walked through with water. A toddler slept against a grandfather's chest, as if nothing in the world could possibly go wrong when grown-ups were this awake. The smoke thinned to a sulk, and then to nothing. Steam lifted in lazy veils. Maya gave a crisp nod, green for tow. Thomas signaled the slowest tempo he had, his wands drawing courtesy in the air. The tug nosed in, pissed the nose wheel, took a breath with the jet before asking it to move. Riley sat tall and let other hands carry him for once. He found that he did not hate it. He found he could love a thing he did not control as they began. The gentle roll off the active, the wind shifted and carried the soft smell of foam into the stands. The crowd did not flinch now. They grinned as if it were confetti after a parade. Caleb walked the line with an easy smile and a dozen quiet thank yous. Jamal watched the right mane as if it were a skittish horse and murmured to it under his breath. Almost their friend. Do not make a scene. Thomas stayed near the nose, the place where intentions are visible, his shoulders square, his hands steady, his mind very far away on a deck lit by red lamps where his son had been a shadow once, and then a memory. Forever halfway to the hard stand, the right gear sighed like an old hinge and threatened to fold. A tiny drop, barely an inch, but enough to send a lightning ripple through every nerve on the field. Maya snapped the strap to Thomas and Jamal, and they laced it under and over the strut like sailors tying a splint. The tug paused as if respecting. Old rituals. Thomas's hands did not fumble. The knot came back to him like a hymn. Jamal pulled snug and looked to Maya. She tested the tension with a small lean of her weight, and the jet took it without complaint. The crisis slid back into its box. They reached the hard stand, a place of tools and shade, and the sovereign domain of ground crew. Ava exhaled for the first time in too long, and marked the runway closed for cleanup. Valdez finally let himself say a soft word that he would never admit was prayer. Riley set the brakes gently, and then released them at Maya's sign. The tug eased away. The fire trucks took a respectful distance. The world got quiet in a way that made people realize how loud their hearts had been. Thomas rested the wands against his thigh and looked up at the cockpit. He lifted his right hand in the oldest signal he knew. 2 fingers to the eyes, then to his chest. I see you. I am here. Riley nodded and unstrapped. He did not climb down. Yet he sat for one more breath and looked over the field, at faces that had turned from spectators into a crew. At a boy with flowers pressed to his shirt, at a chaplain who looked like your favorite aunt, at a mayor who stood like a captain, at a camera that had chosen dignity. He felt a change inside himself take root. Silence held for a breath after. The tug released, then the radios lit again. The calm never lasts long at an airfield. Valdez called the picture from above. The wheel looks good enough for tow. Nice work down there. But be advised the bay fog is crawling in from the south like a cat. Fuel states tightening for the stack. Ava acknowledged, and then another voice. Cut in, younger, tight but controlled. Ghost 2 declaring caution. Flight control light on. Possible AOA vein issue. Fuel at minimum to divert. Request immediate recovery. That voice belonged to Lieutenant Donnie Park. Small frame, big hands, a pilot who treated checklists like poetry and who taught junior flyers to breathe with the jet instead of arguing with it. Ava looked over the field. Runway still moist with foam on the right side, dry on the left, tow path not yet cleared, crash trucks repositioning. The easy decision was to wave Donnie to the alternate. but the fog was swallowing the approach lights at Seaside Field already. The second easy decision was to tell her to hold, but her fuel number said the word no. Ava's mind did the fast math of a leader whose mistakes have names. She keyed, Ghost 2, Harbor, we can take you on 18, left half only, no foam. Winds now 10 cross from starboard, gusts to 13. Confirm LOE caution only. Donnie answered. LOE and a whisper of roll trim needed right. Engine tongue normal. Gear 3 green for now. Unable to hold long. Unable to divert clean. Request straight in. I am with you, Maya heard it, and the line of her shoulders changed, not tighter, clearer. She snapped her team into a new shape, pulled the foam river back with booms. Leave a dry seam wide enough for a safe roll. Dry cam on standby left of center. No spray, unless we see flame. Jamal, you are my runner. Chalk markers every 50 yards on the dry side for Danny's eye. Paint is slick near the seam. Keep people. Clear. Caleb read the crowd and moved them further back with kindness, backed by the authority of a man who would catch a falling thing if he had to. He joked with a boy about how pilots can see smiles at 1,000 feet. The boy grinned wide. Enough to be a beacon Thomas, lifted the wands again and checked the wind with something older than an instrument. He tore a thin ribbon from the edge of a caution flag and let it dangle from his hand, watched it dance. He nodded at the gust rhythm. 3 slow, 1 quick. He spoke toward Ava without needing to shout. She's going to get a nudge on short final. The fast one at the threshold. Tell her to expect it. Tell her to carry a breath of power into the flare and not chase the twitch with muscle. Ava relayed it word for word, her voice the same gentle firmness that had brought Riley home. Donnie answered with a smile you could hear. Copy, Chief, breath of power, no chasing ghosts. I am 4 miles, straight in, wings good enough. Soul good enough. Lena swung her camera to the horizon and found the new story already inside the old one. She had not expected a second act, and yet here it was. Sister May clasped her hands and found a deeper pocket of calm. She understood that some days the lesson is that courage is not a one-time event. It is a practice. The crowd absorbed it. News like weather. You cannot argue with wind. You only choose who to be inside it. Mayor Nora spoke to the volunteers with a captain's cadence. Water here, med kit there, shade for seniors. Nobody runs. We walk like we know what we are doing, because we do up above. Valdez slid to a safer distance, his fuel not rich either, but his voice steady in Donnie's ear. I have you, you have this. Remember that greasy crosswind on Qual Day? This is kinder than that, she laughed once. A sound you make when somebody names your fear and it shrinks, down below. Maya eyed the dry seam and nodded. The sun had baked it to a safe dull. The foam retreated in silver scallops. Jamal hustled. Along the edge dropping bright chalk flags that caught light. Little runes for a pilot's eyes. He finished at the threshold and looked back, chest heaving. Thomas glanced and gave him a small thumbs up that felt like a metal lava cleared the air like a conductor lifting a bow. Harbor to all stations. Ghost 2 straight in 18. Left side dry only. Emergency standing by. Echo 3 secured on hard stand. All eyes on the numbers. Donnie's voice came low. 3 miles, gear down, 3 green. Trim a whisper. Right. Winds felt as advertised. I see the chalk flags. I see the yacht. Old man at the paint. Thomas felt the words in his ribs. The way you feel a hymn you have sung 1,000 times even before the first note. He angled his wands to the slightest left bias. A cue Danny could read if she wanted. He did not own her. Landing. He offered a line, the way a shoreline offers a boat. A place to aim in the crowd. A woman gasped, and then laughed at herself. A toddler clapped without knowing why. A retired airframe tech named Gus muttered torque numbers under his breath like a rosary. Lena's chat had grown into a community overnight. People checking on each other, veterans explaining in simple words what trim meant. and why foam made a runway slippery, and why an old man's 2 orange sticks could matter. A teenager typed, "I want to be Jamal when I grow up," and Jamal would read that later and stand a little taller for the rest of his life. Donnie came over the shoreline low and honest. No flash, no drama, just a craft and a craftsperson doing their work. The gust found her at the threshold like Thomas had promised. A quick, rude hand on the right wing. She let it push and then let it go. Breath of power held like a thread between. Her fingers, left main kissed, nose floated, then settled. The right stayed polite. The jet rolled true on the dry seam. Then another gust tried its luck and lifted the right wing a whisper. A kind of lift that tempts a pilot to stamp a pedal in anger. Danny did not. She eased a touch of opposite aileron, smoothed the yaw, rode the scene like a tightrope walker who trusts the line more than her fear for. A second the nose shimmy remembered. The story Riley had just survived and tried to replay it. The jet wobbled. The crowd planted their feet as if their weight could steady it. Maya's drivers shadowed without crowding. Dry chem nozzles quiet but ready. Caleb watched human edges. Lena watched human faces. Sister May watched the space between breaths where decisions are made. Thomas lifted one wand a hair, a blessing more than a command. Downey's hand stayed water. The shimmy faded like a mood. The jet kept rolling straight. Then the unexpected arrived in a small package. Gulls swept low, chasing a scrap of something bright, and cut across the nose. Donnie's reflex wanted to duck and flinch. She did neither. She held the breath of power 1 second longer and let the bird be a bird. The crowd hissed through their teeth and then laughed. The fog reached the far end of the field, and the light softened, a silver hour bending toward evening. Danny eased the throttles to idle, bled speed, and the Hornet became less of a storm and more of a machine, a thing that could be walked and touched and made safe. She rolled out midfield, and Thomas lowered his wands. Maya signaled her tug forward for a polite escort. Ava marked the runway open enough for the med unit, if needed, and closed enough for everyone else. The balance a ringmaster keeps with lions and children in the same tent. Valdez exhaled and called fuel one last time. He could squeeze one more lap, and then he would have to make a choice he did not love. Donnie taxied toward the hardstand and raised a hand from the cockpit, a small salute to the ground that had become a family in the space of an afternoon, as the jet came to rest near Riley's wounded bird. Danny shut down with the care of someone putting a child to bed. Switches in order, systems quieting, the canopy cracked and slid. She stood on the seat and looked across the field until her eyes found Thomas. She had never met him, but she knew his name. She wore it on a narrow bracelet, etched with a list of those lost on a night long ago. Mark Hawley among them. She had found the bracelet at a memorial fundraiser when she was a freshman. She had kept the letter tucked into it, a letter from a deck chief to families, written in a hand that leaned forward as if walking into wind. Today, the hand and the man had stepped out of a story, and she felt herself change a little as she raised her voice. Chief Howell, permission to come down and shake the hands that held this runway steady. Donnie climbed down slow and sure, boots on the ladder, one hand on the rail. When her feet touched the concrete, she crossed the few steps to Thomas with the careful stride of someone carrying something fragile inside her chest. She took the narrow bracelet from her wrist and showed him the etching, a list of names worn by years and sweat, Mark Hawley among them. She said she had bought it at a memorial table when she was a kid with big eyes and a thin wallet. She said a letter had been tucked into the box, a letter from a deck chief who wrote like a man standing in the wind. She had kept it in her flight bag ever since. He knew which letter without seeing it. His hand hovered over the metal, as if it were a photograph he was not ready to touch. "Thank you for bringing my boy to the field today," he said, the words almost a breath. Donnie nodded and stood a little straighter, as if someone had put a hand on her shoulder from another shore. Riley slid from his cockpit, with the careful grace of a man who has just spoken with fear and parted as friends. He met Thomas. Halfway, he did not try to make a speech. He put his forehead briefly against the old man's knuckles, the way some people greet a flag. Maya pretended she was double-checking a hose, so she could blink hard without being seen. Jamal grinned in a way that put light back into the afternoon. Caleb passed water to hands that did not know they were thirsty. Ava allowed herself one long exhale, and then the radios found her again. Valdez called with a voice that stayed even while the fuel needle fell. Harbor, Ghost Lead, I need to bring this bird home, or I will be swimming. Alternates going white with fog. Fuel calculated. For one honest pass and a whisper to spare. Your approach lights are fading in soup on the far end. Request talk down and a lane lit like a promise. Ava saw the fog swallow the last row of lights, like a tide eating a sandcastle. She felt the quick slice of decision. We are not done, she said into the room and the radio and her own bones. Harbor to all stations. Prepare one pass recovery for Ghost Lead. Left half only. No foam. Light the seam. Keep the people back. Nobody improvises alone. Maya snapped into motion like a song she knew by heart. Line the left edge with every airfield vehicle we own. Park at 45 angle facing out. Low beams only to avoid glare in the soup. Leave 10-yard gaps for sight. Lines, drivers keep engines running. Brake lights on steady. Do not strobe. Do not blind. Dry chem staged at midfield behind the line. Med unit at the far left corner, out of jet wash. Her crew moved like a school of fish turning together. Tires. Whispering, radios clicking, hands signaling when words would be clumsy. Jamal sprinted to the storage shed and came back with a crate of battery beacons. He ran the scene, dropping lights every 50 paces. Bright coins of resolve on dull concrete. He finished at the threshold and looked up. Thomas gave him that small nod again, the kind that goes into a young man's spine and stays there. Caleb widened the sterile zone with patience and a smile. That said, trust me. He spoke to the front row like a neighbor. We will help by standing still, by breathing slow, by letting the crew see the gaps and fill them. The crowd obeyed not because of the badge on his chest, but because of the calm in his voice, sister. May stood near the rope with both palms open. She led the field in the quiet rhythm that had already saved one man today. Inhale 4, exhale 6 again. Become a harbor for whoever is in the air. Lena set her camera on a tripod and then jogged 2 steps to help a volunteer drag a heavy generator 10 yards to the left so it would not hum into the radio band. She tucked hair behind her ear and framed the scene so the world would see hands and faces, and not just a jet in Fagava. Looked to Thomas, and he was already ready. His wands hung quiet at his sides, his eyes on the wind. He spoke with the modest certainty of a craftsperson. Patch me to his ear, and I will be his paddles. I will talk him down like we did on nights when the deck was a rumor and the ocean had teeth. Ava keyed the patch without ceremony. Ghost Lead, Harbor, Chief Hale will give you paddles talk down. His authorities from the school of fire and rain. Valdez answered with a laugh that carried courage. Copy paddles, happy to be graded. By a legend, I have the lane. I have the beacons. I have maybe one song's worth of fuel. Thomas lifted the ribbon in his fingers again. Felt the 3 slow gusts and the quick slap. He put the ribbon away and let his voice become a metronome. Ghost Lead, paddles, you are a breath, high and whisper right. Ease your chin down to the paint. Carry a thread of power. Do not chase the twitch. Let it pass through you. Good, good. Hold it there. You are on center with a bias I like. Keep the bias. You will feel a hand at the threshold. Let it touch and let it go. Valdez answered like a student who trusts his teacher, feeling it, easing, holding, trim a hair left, carrying the thread. Ava watched the numbers and felt a peace settle over her like a jacket that fit. The peace of a task being done by the right people together, The fog took another step toward them. The far end dissolved. The near end sharpened. The vehicles along the left cast a low scarf of light. Brake lamps a red spine. Beacons a constellation. Fallen to earth, the scene looked like a lane marked by care itself. Jamal stood at the threshold with his hands curled into fists. He did not intend to lift. Maya paced the midpoint with her drivers at half ready. Caleb scanned the humans for the one person whose fear was about to overflow, and found none. Sister May whispered the names of everyone she could remember. Riley placed a hand flat on the Hornet's skin, as if to say to his airplane, "You did well. Rest." Danny stood with Thomas and slid the bracelet back onto her wrist, as if fastening us. Story closed. Ghost lead 3 miles. Gear down. 3 green. Aoi sweet. Glide feels honest. Valdez called. Thomas answered the way a river answers the shape of its banks. Gentle, sure. You are a whisper fast. Lead the whisper. Keep your hands. Like water. Yes, that is it. Ride the breath. Ride it. Do not make a memory of fear. Make a memory of craft. The words were not poetry to Valdez. They were bearings and altitude and trust. The jet came into the soup like a shadow, deciding to become a body. The crowd could not see him yet, but they felt the sound in their ribs, and that was enough to start their hearts marching in time. At 2 miles, Valdez reported a flicker in the right engine that came and went like a thought. He did not like it and did not fear it. He acknowledged it and chose the next correct action. At 1 mile, Ava called winds 11 cross with gust 13. Threshold crosswind active. Thomas folded that into his rhythm without losing the song. There is the hand at the threshold. Feel it. Do not grip back. You are good. You are home if you keep choosing gentle. Lena zoomed just enough to hold the lane of lights without losing the people who had built it. Her chat had gone almost still, as if thousands of living rooms had learned how to breathe together, and the ground offered one more test, because that is what days like this do. A small dog slipped its collar at the edge of the crowd and bolted under the rope. It ran not toward the lane but toward a noise it did not understand. Caleb was already moving. He did not sprint. He cut the angle like a safety. He scooped the dog like a fumble and tucked it against his chest. The owner cried once and then pressed both hands to her mouth. The crowd held its breath and then let it out. The lane stayed clear. The radio stayed calm. Thomas did not even blink, because decks and runways are built on the assumption that something unexpected will always come to the party. Decision height. Valdez said, "I have beacons. I have brake lights. I have your voice." Committing, the word. Committing passed through the field like a bell struck in a chapel. Everyone found their feet again. Jamal whispered to the concrete like it could hear, "We are ready for you, friend." Maya lifted her hand, and our drivers lifted their chins. Ava shut out every noise that was not numbers and air. Sister May felt a warmth behind her ribs that did not belong to the weather. Thomas lifted his left wand an inch and let his right rest, a benediction in orange. Come home out of the gray. The nose appeared first, then the canopy, then the wings, then the left main. Damp light made the Hornet look like a creature that had just climbed from the sea. Valdez let the breath of power stay a heartbeat longer than pride would have. Then he let it go. The left kissed. The nose hovered. The right stayed polite. His hands were water. The crosswind tugged and was not indulged. The beacons winked like stars applauding. The brake lights drew a line through the fog that any honest pilot would want to follow. And the old man's voice walked him the last 100 yards like a father, trotting behind a bicycle in the dark. The Hornet rolled into view through the gray like a ship finding harbor. The left main touched as if greeting an old friend. The nose hovered and settled. The right stayed polite. Brake lights lined the seam like a red river. Beacons winked. Engines sighed toward idle. And in that softening sound, the field remembered how to breathe again. Ava called rollout with a voice that trembled once and then steadied. Maya's trucks shadowed like patient guardians. Caleb handed the small dog back to its owner, and the woman laughed and cried at the same time. Sister May rested a palm over her heart, and the crowd copied without needing to be told. Thomas kept his wands low, not to command, only to bless the last yards of air becoming ground. Valdez slowed to a walk, and the jet became a person's craft. Again, his canopy slid open. The fog swirled like wool around the cockpit. He raised a hand and found the lights of trucks and brake lamps reflecting in the visor like a constellation. He followed the seam exactly as Thomas had sung it. He let the jet roll to the mark Maya had chosen. And when the chocks kissed the tires, he cut the engines with a tenderness that felt like an apology, and a thank you rolled into one. For a breath. The field was quiet, except for metal cooling and foam whispering, and people remembering they had lungs. Eva marked the runway closed and safe. Her headset came off, and she pinched the bridge of her nose. Then she straightened, because leadership is a posture as well as a job. She looked across the field and saw not a crowd but a company. Not a crisis, but a lesson that had become a story. She keyed one last all call. Harbor to all stations. Ground is green. Pilot safe. Crews safe. Thank you for choosing each other. The words floated over the concrete, and into the stands and down the taxiway, and into the quiet of closets and hangars. Where fear had been kept, and now could be put away, Maya approached the old man first, because work recognizes work before ceremony begins. She tapped her wrench against her thigh and grinned. Chief, you still got that music in your hands. Thomas smiled with his eyes more than his mouth. The wands pointed toward the concrete like roots. You kept the promise of your badge. He said, slow is your friend, and today it was our salvation. Jamal hovered at her shoulder with that nylon strap draped like a sash. He looked taller then. An hour ago, he looked like someone who would always remember how the old man nodded at him twice. He asked, is there a name for the knot you tied? Thomas answered, a name and a story. Come see me tomorrow, and I will teach you. Both Riley came up with a stiffness that would brag later with aches. He stepped close, and for a heartbeat, both men were quiet. Then Riley spoke with the softness of a student, thanking a teacher from another. Century, Chief. Today I learned that a runway is a choir, not a solo, and that I had forgotten the taste of that truth. Thomas reached and closed his big hand on Riley's shoulder. You remembered just in time, son. Then he looked at Donnie, and Banny lifted the narrow bracelet. The tiny names catching low light, Chief, she said. I have carried your son's name all these years, and today you carried me. He touched the bracelet and did not flinch, and in that small, unfancy motion, something long and heavy inside him set itself down at last. Valdez reached them with a face scrubbed clean by relief and humility. He offered a coin from his pocket, the little challenge token pilots hand each other when words feel clumsy. Sir, he said, may I trade you this for a lesson? At a table with coffee tomorrow, bring the wands and the knot and the ribbon in the wind. Thomas laughed, a sound with edges that had not been heard in years. Bring your humility and your hungry eyes, he answered. The table is ready whenever you are. Lena lowered her camera for a moment, because history deserved one breath as memory. Without a lens, then she lifted it again, because memory is also a duty. She framed the old man, the ground crew, the pilots, the chaplain, the mayor, the crowd, a little boy with flowers finally walking up with Caleb to deliver them. The bouquet went into Thomas's hands, and he looked down and saw they were not neat. Stems wild, colors brave. He pressed the flowers under one arm, raised the wands. And the field understood that there was one more act left in this day. Ava caught the cue and keyed her mic to the formation that lingered overhead on fumes and discipline. Harbor to Ghost Flight, if your fuel allows a taxi by and an honor pause, we will make a lane safe. No smoke, no show, just a turn and a facing. Valdez looked to Danny and Riley, and they nodded, The tug nudged their jets into a line facing the crowd, quiet, no bravado. The field arranged itself like a congregation that has learned a new hymn and wants to sing it together. Maya lined her trucks in a gentle arc behind the jets, brake lights steady. Jamal and the crew stood shoulder to shoulder at the edge of the paint. Caleb and the officers held the rope without pulling. Sister May stood with her palms open and bright with foam and ash and blessing. Then it happened, the moment the title would remember. The pilots in the cockpits, the ground crew on the concrete, the people in the stands, the mayor, the chaplain, the reporter, the tug drivers, the med techs, the old Marine, the toddler on a grandparent's shoulder, the boy who had carried wildflowers. All of them turned in a single simple motion and faced the old man on the tarmac, faces steady, chins lifted, hands quiet, no chant, no speech. Only a field of people choosing a direction together. Thomas did not raise his arms high. He lifted one wand in a small arc that meant thank you in a language only a few remember. And that was enough. He walked to the nose of Riley's jet and tucked the wildflowers in the seam by the number. He touched the metal the way a father touches a doorframe. When he leaves for work, he turned back and found Ava waiting. She said, "Harbor Field would like to offer you a job we cannot pay enough for. Come teach our kids and our crews. Start a course with Maya and Caleb. Let Jamal be your first apprentice. Call it the Mark Hawley School of Keeping People Alive." The name landed like a hand on his shoulder. Thomas looked at the wands, looked at the boy, looked at the sky that had taken his son and then given him this day. He nodded once, slow, serious. "Yes, we will build it here." The fog thinned in ribbons. The light went silver blue. The song from somebody's youth came back on low, and this time it was not obscene. It was a gentle rhythm to sweep foam. Coil hoses, store wands, write reports, the chores that make hero days end and clean hangars. Lena took one last wide shot and let the frame breathe. She knew the headline already. Not about danger, not about spectacle, about a town that remembered how to choose each other. She wrote it in her head as she rolled. Everyone faced the old man on the tarmac because he faced them first, because he faced the sky for them when it asked too much before the crowd dispersed. Sister May asked the field for one more breath together. Inhale for those we have lost. Exhale for those we are still becoming. Thomas closed his eyes and saw his son as a boy pedaling away from him down a sidewalk. He felt a hand he could not see steadying the back of his heart. He opened his eyes and saw Jamal standing there with a notebook already open, ready to learn the knot and the ribbon and the way to hold a wand without shaking, ready to become a keeper of calm, ready to teach it to the next kid. And the next twilight rolled in with the kind of peace that has earned its right to be quiet. Trucks idled and then slept. The jets cooled and clicked and whispered. The crowd drifted toward cars with the softness of people leaving a wedding. Promises made, vows renewed. The old man gathered his folding chair and slid the wands under his arm like two slender oars. He looked at the line of faces that had turned toward him, and he raised his chin in a thank you that needed no words. Then he started walking, not away from the field, but into tomorrow, where a room with a table and coffee and a coil of nylon and a ribbon cut from a flag would wait, where a boy with wide eyes would learn that courage is a practice, where a town would carry a new story like a lantern, a story about a diamond that broke, a field that held, and an old man who lifted two orange lights and showed them all how to come home.